Hi, one of the subjects that I'm absolutely passionate about is organisational change. Organisational change is a very, very difficult thing to implement successfully in organisations. In fact, 70% of organisations fail at implementation stage of a change process. Have we ever asked ourselves why they fail? Have we actually analysed deeper into organisational change? Because one of the biggest pieces that you need to understand in organisational change is that planning, formulation, and especially the implementation stage, but going deeper into the organisational change before you actually start to implement it. Now, we could talk about Kotter, Minksberg, Bowman and Deal. There are all sorts of theories in organisational change and they're expert theorists, and they are brilliant. But the trick is how to implement successfully the organisational change. So I wanted to pass on some of my thoughts and feelings and some of the processes and strategies that I utilised when I completed a successful organisational change a few years ago with an organisation. Now, one of the biggest things that you know in leadership, and you'll hear this from Harvard to all the top business universities, is in order to make an organisational change or organisational decision, you need to understand exactly the impact or consequences at the end of the line. That means what are the impact and the consequences of that decision when you've made it. Now, sometimes in an organisational change process, we need to make sure that we have the right people that are available at the planning stage of the change process. Because if you haven't got those organisational, those specialists or managers or the people that are there that can add a richness to the knowledge, then it is going to be really difficult at the first stage of organisational change to implement or achieve the planning stage. And you make decisions, as we know from many theorists in Harvard, where we've made decisions where we don't understand the impact. And then when it comes to implementation, it doesn't work or it doesn't get achieved because we don't understand right from the section specialists. Now, I'm going to go into a little bit of theory. There's a great theorist called Gary Hamel, and Gary actually talks about organisational change. And it's something that I've been very wary about when I actually go through the planning, formulation and implementation stages of organisational change myself. Gary actually says if you look at people in an organisation, and I'll expand on this, he calls them the section specialists. So in an organisational change, he says, if you don't empower in an organisational change your people from within, they'll empower themselves from without, which means they'll leave the organisation. And I'll give you a little bit more of my insight into why that is quite crucial when you're starting to plan your organisational change and making sure you have the right people there. Because you could have the top people in an organisation, some of your top specialists or managers, and they've built their own self-identity. They have a set of values and self-identity, which actually when they come into an organisation, they merge that self-identity with that of the organisation, and it creates this marriage of social identity where both your values actually merge and create this almost like marriage in a sense. And that creates a happy environment and an environment where they feel wanted, they feel needed, they feel comfort, they feel security. But in an organisational change decision, if you haven't embraced those section specialists or those people with that knowledge in the planning stage, what tends to happen is the organisational change comes through. Some of your best staff will suddenly realise that they've not been part of the change process. You've missed out on that richness of knowledge that they possess. But they feel as though they've been let down, they feel isolated. The reactions can be anything from resistance to, wait a minute, they never asked me, they never saw, or they never actually asked for my knowledge or my specialist. These are the implications. These could be a set of consequences. These could be the impacts that I see, and I'm there right in the coalface, right there actually as that section specialist. And that leads to all forms of resistance and eventually people leaving companies that cost money for organisations. So in that planning stage, empowering the section specialists are absolutely crucial. So you bring the right team in, you empower them, you actually look at the plan. You adapt that plan at that stage. When you're formulating your strategy then in implementation, you're actually using the section specialists as advocates and ambassadors of the change process. And that means at every stage, you're using their skill, their expertise, their specialism, not just to test the actual change process itself, but actually transfer that knowledge to other people throughout the organisation. And as they transfer that knowledge, what you'll find is there'll still be small issues, or there'll still be other people that have a richness of knowledge that could impact that change process. So you listen and you gain that feedback from the ambassadors and the advocates of change that you've empowered in the planning, formulation and implementation stages of the change process itself. Get that right and you're a long way to actually successfully implementing the organisational change, but more importantly, you're understanding the impacts and the consequences right at the far end of the section specialists that are there doing this role every day. Now, to make sure that you've got that, you employ a devil's advocate that overviews the change process itself and supports and helps and gives you a third dimensional view of the change process through the planning, formulation and implementation stages. Because putting this in place certainly helps increase the chances of you successfully implementing a change process. It really helps you to improve the success or increase your chances of successfully implementing a change process. But it also empowers the culture and the people in the organisation because they feel wanted, they feel needed, and they feel something that is part of them helping shape the future of the company. Thank you very much.